Okay, we're being recorded.
Okay, welcome everybody. We're just going to let the participants join the webinar. I'm Tracy from Academy of Cheese. I think lots of you know me, and we've got two fabulous Lucy's.
You've been on the wine as well.
Who are going to run this webinar. I'm going to hand over to you, and actually I can't see anybody coming into this at the moment.
That's right, that's because they're all going to catch up. It's Friday night.
Oh, we have. There's people coming in now. I think it's because Perry has been over on Instagram Live doing a fabulous thing about demoing affinage at home in a shoebox. So it's been hilarious.
I'd be really interested.
But I'm sure there's lots of people coming across. Okay, I'm going to hand over to you, lovely Lucy's. You look amazing. Just enjoy yourselves, and I hope the technology works. I will sit around in the background and be here to help if you're struggling. Anyway, enjoy. Right, stop my video.
Thanks, Tracy.
Pleasure. I'm trying to leave.
How do I get rid of that bar of stuff? No, that bar. No, there's stuff at the bottom. That bar of stuff at the bottom. That's oh wait, what are you doing? Well, hello. Hello. Why are we there?
That's it. You're on, ladies. So
yeah,
everybody
on screen. We're not
everybody can hear you. So just start.
Hello, everybody. I don't know whether you can see us.
Yes, we can see you.
Okay, so all we can see is Tracy Collins' blank screen. So I don't know how we get rid of that. So
okay.
Anyway, we'll carry on. We can't really see ourselves, but I'm Lucy.
And I'm Lucy.
And we, as the two Lucys, have cooked together for over 35 years. We've written hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of recipes. We've trained chefs. We have catered for endless numbers of guests at different functions. And we're just true and utter foodies.
All right, okay. So one of our big loves is to do the foolproof recipe. We've been developing recipes for the ski chalets.
I think you'll find we're also cheese lovers.
Oh, we're cheese lovers. Of course, we're cheese lovers.
We're cheese lovers, and we're two of the co-founders of the Chiswick Cheese Market. Yeah. So hence we're here today.
So I've interrupted me with my foolproof thing. So we love our foolproof recipes, and so that's one of the things we're going to do tonight. And so
the reason why we write foolproof recipes because we write recipes for ski chalets, and the staff are on show, and the recipes have to work every single time for every single chalet host in every single chalet in every single circumstance, no matter what their level of skill in cooking is. So often traditional recipes we will take apart, we'll put them back together, we'll find the places it can go wrong, and we'll make a way of cooking it that's foolproof. And that's what we've done with our tartiflette. But tonight, first, before we do that, I am an absolute Francophile. I have lived in France for very many years. I'm a very keen skier. A big hiker. I've lived in the mountains. I love cheese. I love wine. And I would invite you to join me on a hike up the mountains to see artisan cheese making today in the Alps. So if you'll join me, I'm just going to try a little bit of technology now to see if we can screen share, and we can.
Sorry, did you see the dog?
We've got a little bit of problem with the dog. Anybody looking after dogs?
Yes, I'm just going to get rid of the dog. Come on, dog.
Okay, we want a bit of screen share. And can you see the screen share? Lucy?
No, not yet. I can't see it.
Screen share, go back onto Zoom.
Share screen at the bottom, ladies.
Yeah, okay, we've got share screen, but our
So you have to click that.
Yeah, you have to go up. Oh, you have to go up.
I'm going up.
No, there. But our PowerPoint is not there. because it has disappeared somewhere. So how can I get that? Okay, so screen share, come on.
The PowerPoint, it still needs to be open in the background.
Yes, it was open before we had to change technology because we were actually using an iPad that failed. So excuse us. So we want, I've only got Tracy Colley on my screen share because you are on it.
So, you're in the problem, just go into open most recent.
Where?
You've got the PowerPoint open.
Yeah.
You just need to open your actual PowerPoint. It's not
You're
working.
nearly there. You're nearly there.
We're nearly there. Anyway, we're going to hike up a very lovely mountain in a minute, I hope.
So where do you keep your documents?
I don't. It's not on documents. It's only on PowerPoint. It's here. It's on the screen. Okay, so if I view my slideshow, the whole screen is there.
There you go.
But it's not this. It's
There
not.
you go. That's it.
Okay, here we go.
Well, no, we've got sign in. Hang on, ladies. We've got sign into the iTunes store. Is what we're seeing at the moment. So I think you've clicked on the wrong one.
We've got Once Upon a Time in the French Alps.
Oh, I'm seeing sign into the iTunes store.
Okay, so let's have a little go. So it's.
So to press share screen and then click on. That's it. We've got it. Woo!
Okay, everybody. So I apologise for that. If you'd like to join me, I'm hot and sweaty now, so I think I'm going to have a glass of wine. But if you'd like to join me on a little hike up, it's just to get a little bit of ambience about this French cheese thing and how it's made in the mountains. So I've lived in the mountains for a long time, and I just thought I'd show you a picture of the French Alps in the winter. This snow melts in the spring and it melts into the grass, and it is 6 months of high mineral water into the grass that makes some of the lushest pastures in the world. Okay, we're heading up to Alpage Ariondaz in Courchevel. An alpage is a mountain pasture. It's a literal term for a pasture up in the mountains, often accompanied by a small chalet or little dwelling where the herdsman will live and possibly make cheese. So here is an alpine pasture. And we can see the cows. We're in Courchevel. We're in the Three Valleys. So the skiers amongst you, these are ski terrain. This is where you ski in the winter. You can see that the skiing has grown up around the mountain pasture rather than vice versa. Everything you see there is the Three Valleys. So that's what you ski on. If you skied in Maribel, Courchevel, Val Thorens, this is part of the same ski area. And here's the cows at the front. These cows are actually terrene cows. And here is the milking parlour. So quite conversely to our milking in the UK, the cows don't come down to the milking parlour. They actually bring the milking parlour to the cows because they can be really high up in mountain pastures, and they don't come back to the farm really all summer. And here is one of the milk churns, and they collect the milk from the portable milking parlours. And this works just like your thermos flask would. It's a double skin, and it keeps the milk at the temperature from the cow till it gets either to the alpage. So we're looking at a very small artisan cheesemaker today, but this same milk goes in the churns and it goes down the mountain to the cooperative dairies like Beaufort or Comté, depending on where you are in the Alps. And here's one of the cows. It's a terrene cow, so very local to the area. The cows can be terrene or sometimes abondance as well.
They look smaller than a Friesian. Our Friesians, what are they?
They are smaller, so our Friesians are probably about 700 kilos. These are probably only about 550. They're very hardy, they're robust, they're compact, their hooves are particularly suited to mountain pastures. They're very low maintenance, so they can put the cows out in the summer and they can really almost look after themselves. But their milk yield is much less. So these will only have about half the milk yield to a Friesian, so they're really chosen for their hardiness rather than a high quantity of milk. Okay. So we know where we're going, and we're starting off at a chalet in Courchevel 1550. So the skiers amongst you will know where that is. So we're down at 1550 meters altitude, and we're going to walk up the mountain through a very steep forest about 450 meters to come to the plateau where the farm is. So that's me on the right and that's my partner Ian on the left. It's long shadows because it's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a summer's day, and we're going up to see the milk coming into the farm.
Can you only get there on foot, or?
No, in the summer there are roads which most cars can deal with, certainly 4x4s, but most cars can deal with them, and you can get up to the cheese farm and the mountain pastures in the summer. And there's walking from there, so people don't have to necessarily start at the bottom every time. You can go a little way up. So we're hiking up, it's very steep, it's taking us about 45 minutes, and now we're arriving at 2,000 meters high. So we're coming up onto an open plateau. I've marked where the cheese farm is. That's a really old building. It's about 200 years old. And you can see how the ski area has grown up round the old farm. So the building on the left is a ski lift station. So it's got a big cable car coming up from 1650. And there's chairlift pylons. And you're standing on a ski slope. We've got about half an hour to go though. So it's not as steep as it's been, but we're heading over to that cheese farm. But I'm just going to give you a quick pan round now. So we've arrived on the plateau. We're just going to see where we've come from because there's the trees we've just walked out of. And we can see our first little glimpse of the steep valley we've walked out of, and our first little glimpse of Courchevel 1850. That's the Altiport. So if you arrive in your own jet, you're most welcome at Courchevel.
Hello, ladies, are you still there? We lost you for a while. Okay, I need you to unmute, please.
Okay. We're back.
Oh, it was going so smoothly, and it was so eloquent.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to whiz very quickly through our little trip, and we're actually going to get on with our cook along because the tartiflette's going to bake without us if we're not careful. So does that sound good if we get on with our cooking?
Yeah, just go ahead. And what we'll do is we'll put your video up on the website afterwards.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, everybody, you'll have to come on a journey with me up the mountain another time. And what we're going to do is we're going to cook tartiflette for you because we're in Lucy's lovely kitchen in Rutland and we're safe in here and we weren't very safe up the mountain. So what we're going to do is cook tartiflette, and I think Lucy's got the main ingredient here and she's going to hold it up for us.
Can you see that okay? That is a lovely little bit of reblochon. It was given to us by one of our Chiswick Cheese Market stall holders, Roberto from French Alps, who's been with us right from the outset of the cheese market, and this is one of the cheeses that he sells.
Okay, so a little bit about reblochon. First made in the 13th century up in northern Savoie, so we've moved a bit further north than the Three Valleys. We're up near Chamonix now. And in the 13th century, the tenant farmers were charged their rent and tax by the amount of milk that their cows produced. So they were very canny, because 3/4 of the way through milking, they would tie off the udders and they would sneak back later and do the rest of the milking after the counting had been done. And the French term for blocking is reblocher, hence the name of the cheese, reblochon. So that's where our word comes from. And so no surprises as to its name. Now, so it's an ancient cheese, it's a rind wash cheese, it's very delicious and can be just a little bit stinky.
So we've got an ancient cheese. Tell me about the recipe.
Well, the recipe, funnily enough, is not ancient at all. So some of you might be really surprised to know that it was invented by the Northern Savoie Tourist Office in 1980. And I'll say that again, 1980. So I'm old enough to remember when I first did my ski seasons that tartiflette was not a known thing at all. So reblochon was quite difficult to sell. It's a washed rind cheese. As you know from some of those washed rind cheeses, they're a little bit Marmite. People love them or they hate them. It's an excellent cheese for cooking with, but they really wanted to encourage people to eat it and buy it, and they really wanted a signature dish for the area. Hence tartiflette was born. So people argue all the time with us or me and say, oh, that's not a traditional ingredient for tartiflette. There are no really traditional ingredients to tartiflette, other than the ingredients used are ancient, and they are ingredients that were available to the tenant farmers and to the mountain farmers and cheesemakers at that time. So we have potatoes, which they could grow. We have garlic, which they could grow. The dairy, they were herdsmen, so they looked after cows. They had cheese, and they made wine. So those are the ingredients for tartiflette. So all of those are, and charcuterie that they made, they cured their meat and their animals for eating during the winter. So we'll crack on with the recipe. This is something that we actually make in the chalets, and as Lucy will tell you, the reason we slightly cheat is so that it's easy for everyone to serve and enjoy the meal together.
Okay, we're going to start showing you these are the softened onions as opposed to the raw onion. The onions are softened, they're cooked for about 10-15 minutes with the lid on a very nice low heat in their oil. And if it looks a little dry, just a little splash of water just to keep the steam going, so it's they get the lovely sweetness. So there's nothing left of the sour oniony smell. It's all sweet and gorgeous. And
so just tell me about these again, because we're not frying these in a frying pan.
You're not frying them, you're literally just sweating them, you're cooking them down in their own juices.
So why would we not fry them?
Well, you don't want to the colour necessarily, but you're not going to create a little jackety crispiness around them, where all the flavour, because you want all the flavours to come out of the onion.
Okay,
and
so what we want them to be soft, and we want the flavour to go into the sauce.
Yes.
So when I do this at home, I tend to do 4 or 5 onions at once.
Definitely. The more the merrier, really. It cooks better in quantity.
And then I find they freeze well. I can even put them in ice cube things, or I can put them in little pots in the freezer, and I can just bring it out.
I keep a big jar in the fridge.
So we could have done this ahead.
Absolutely, you can do
could
that.
Have done this
just
ahead.
scoop them out when you
and in
want
fact,
them.
we have done it ahead, because here they are. Okay, so I wonder if we can have another little look. I have to say, we are working really under pressure, because we were all set up and it was formidable, and then we couldn't use 2 bits of equipment at once, so we have to change what we were doing. So excuse our technophobish behaviour, but here we are, and we're going. So we've got onions. The second major ingredient, so that's our big flavour to the bottom of the dish. Our second major ingredient is the potatoes. So I'm just going to bring those forward. I'm not going to boil potatoes for you, because I know that you can all boil potatoes, but here I've got the potatoes that we're using. Traditionally in the mountains, the potatoes that were grown there are of a waxy variety. So when you have a raclette, whenever you have any of the mountain meals in France, it's always a waxy potato that's used. We've got some Charlotte potatoes today, and we've cooked them for about 15-20 minutes in salted water. They're now just warm, they're just easy enough for me to handle. And you must cook them for this recipe, or this version of the recipe, just perfectly to how you want to eat them. So don't think it's going to go back in the oven, they'll cook more. When we put the whole thing back in the oven, it's going to join together and cook together, but it's not going to cook more. So if your potatoes are al dente now, they will be al dente when you bring the tartiflette out. So you want to cook these to exactly how you want to eat them. And if they're a waxy potato, they'll hold their shape beautifully and they won't crumble. So you can afford that extra minute just to make sure they're beautifully cooked. So we've got potatoes, we've got onions. Lucy, what else do we have?
We've got lardon. Now these are actually nice big lardon. They are, get ours, Waitrose, smoked. If you can only get small lardon or even pancetta, then that's fine. Whatever you actually can get in your local supermarket. And we've cooked them off here. Nice. There you go. Look, all those lovely toasty flavours at the bottom. We've cooked them separately. We're actually going to layer everything up together. But one of the things about our foolproof recipes is the fact that we can take different elements in and out of the recipe so that the, if you're cooking for people with special dietary requirements, whether that's nuts or meat or dairy or whatever it might be, you can add in, take away.
I'll tell you one really good thing though about farting about this computer is that we have to now actually sit down to be seen. so actually, we've had a very hard day. So actually, a chair's not a bad thing.
So we're going to go on from this, the garlic.
So how long did the lardons take to cook? That was a higher temperature than the onions, presumably.
Yes, higher. No, just fry them off nice and high. Well, it depends on the size of your lardon, but those were probably cracking on for 10 minutes.
So I also think, when Lucy mentioned about cooking for different dietary requirements. So say you've got one vegetarian in a group of 10 people and you're cooking tartiflette. So this is a way of being able to cook the whole meal at one time and then just being able to transpose a little bit for them. So what we do in the chalet is we actually use mushrooms in place of the lardons. And we chop them quite small, so in the same sort of size as lardons. We salt them and then we fry them really high until they're almost leathery. So we've got an almost vegetarian version of the lardon. So we're actually transposing something vegetarian for something meat that's similar, so it works really well in the dish. So when we build the tartiflette, bear that in mind, that you could have had a vegetarian version.
I'm just going to show you that one there, which is done, that has no onion in for a non-onion eater, actually, but to make it a little bit more interesting, it's got some cooked broccoli in. So, a very...
Don't confuse them already. Don't confuse them.
It's a very, very, very flexible recipe.
So where were we? We've got onions, we've got potatoes, and we've got lardons. Now, what we need is some really delicious sauce to go in with it. And we're going to use a Savoy wine. So wine is a big ingredient, and we want to use the big flavour of Savoy wine. So do you know Savoy wine, Lucy?
I do know Savoy wine, because when I've been to the mountains, it's one of my favourites. The Apremont, and this is the Alpine.
Alpine, yeah. So it's very, very local to where I was going to take you to walk, which is the Three Valleys. So it's literally the lower pastures of there. What we've got now is the saucepan, which we cook the onions in. It's got the oil from the onions, it's got the flavour from the onions. So even though we've taken this apart, we're not losing any flavour at any point, at any time during this dish. It's all going inside. So what we're going to put into this saucepan is 2 cloves of garlic. Now, I've got a little tip for you. You never need, we're not going to chop the garlic, we're going to grate it. You don't need to peel it. I sometimes pull the very tip off. And I've got a microplane, but it could be a nice grater from that lovely Swedish superstore, so don't think you've got to have something posh. And all I'm going to do is grate it. Can you tip it down just a little bit more? Lovely. Can you see that? I'm just going to change the angle of my fingers so that I'm just pushing it against. And you can see on my hand, I have all the skin. And on the other side of the grater, I have all the garlic. This will work for any stew, anything you are doing, and you will never have to peel a clove of garlic again. So, okay, I've got 2 cloves of garlic. I did one before, so I've got 2 cloves of garlic in there, and I want 250 ml of my beautiful Savoy wine. Now, don't think that you're going to have a treat by having something much more mellow. This actually really does need a wine that's quite tart. So you can buy a bit of Plonk, which is absolutely perfect. You can use Savoy wine and be really authentic. Or
if you can find it.
Oh yeah, no, I think it's pretty much available. Is it? Oh yes, I think Savoy wine is not uncommon in the UK now. What have you got in there?
I've got wine and garlic.
Okay, so now we've just got our wine and garlic in our onion pan. Lucy's going to bring that to the boil for literally 1 minute. Why 1 minute? We're not into reducing the wine. We don't want to reduce the quantity. We don't want to make it more mellow. All we want to take is the acidic edge off it, because we're going to add a little bit of cream in a minute. And if we add cream to the raw wine, it will curdle. And we definitely don't want that. So I'm just going to watch that come to the boil. I'm going to leave you with Lucy because she's going to tell you what we're going to add to it in a minute.
Now, we've already talked about the fact that tartiflette isn't a very traditional, but not a very ancient tradition. We're going to depart with tradition even further, and we are thickening our sauce with corn flour. Heaven forbid. But the reason we're doing it with corn flour is because ordinarily, if you're going to cook the potatoes in the sauce from raw, then the starches from the potato will automatically thicken your sauce.
So, although we said this wasn't a traditional dish, actually the original recipe in the 1980s was a sort of variant of gratin dauphinoise. So you would lay up raw potatoes and you would layer up your juice and you would let them cook together. And so therefore the starch would be thickening the sauce.
Yes, but we're not doing it like that. We're going for the consistency to get a consistent result.
I think we would have 3 consistencies all in one sentence.
Excellent. Okay.
Okay.
So what we're going to do?
I'll mind my own business and go back to the wine.
We're actually going to add our corn flour just to a little bit of water. We've actually measured out the corn flour, but it don't have to be that.
It is a teaspoon.
It's just a teaspoon. Yes, it's a teaspoon.
No, our recipes are all written. They're very accurate. I don't think you should besmirch our recipes.
No. I'm not. What I'm trying to say is, we know we've got the right amount, but if you add it, if you're not sure about your recipe, if you have not got a decent teaspoon measure, then
could you bob down a bit more? Your head's this.
Hello everyone. If you've not got a consistent teaspoon measure, then don't add all in one go. Add bit by bit, and then you'll know how thick you want. So we're looking for a consistency akin to single cream by the time we finish.
So here we've got 150 ml of cream, and we're going to add that to our recently just boiled wine and garlic. The smell in here is absolutely delicious. And because we've just actually opened a bottle of wine for that, I think we should taste it, don't you? And in fact, tasting as you go along is really important in any cooking. I'll just tell you that after 35 years of cooking. So for example, we chose smoked lardons, and we spoke briefly about that. We actually like the flavour of the smoked lardons in this dish, but they could have been cured lardons, and sometimes the cured salted lardons are really, really salty. So when you've fried your lardons or fried your bacon in the pan, you want to taste it before you start cooking anything else. Because if you don't taste it, you might be just over-salting the whole dish. We've actually tasted our lardons. I believe we tasted our lardons earlier.
I certainly did.
Certainly did. So she tasted the lardons, and they are actually quite smoky. They're not very salty, so we can afford to be relatively generous with the salt because it's going to flavour our potatoes and the whole dish. The other thing you should do is when you're building this, and that's the advantage of building it bit by bit, is taste your cheese. No 2 cheeses are the same, and Reblochon can be quite a salty cheese. So again, bear in mind all the time when you're putting these things together, they're going to be eaten in one mouthful all at the same time. So you don't want to be too generous with any single flavour if it sits inside another one. Anyway, cheers, and I'll just see how she's getting on with the sauce.
I'm just going to find this one. I'm just getting everything together so we can do a bit of layering up, and then we can see a cooked version.
We've actually got one half, so we can go back to the other thing.
There we go. Going to have when I say clear up, it means just put everything in the sink, out of sight.
Just needs a little bit more corn flour in there because we've cooked it quite quickly. So we're just going to thicken it slightly more, and we're going to serve it tonight with a big salad. The other thing that we would serve it with is cornichon. I just have to use gazetters. So, have we got a board ready to build our tartiflette on?
Yes, here we go.
We're fine. There we go. So, any oven-proof dish is fine. We've got an enamel dish, which is perfectly fine. I've put a few potatoes in the bottom, but I'm going to cut them up and I'm going to layer them in. Cheese inside. We're not quite at cheese. We're not quite at cheese level. We've got a little board that it sits on, and you can see it's a beautiful washed rind cheese. So when I say washed rind for the uninitiated in cheese terms, it means that a brine solution, or it can be alcohol or whatever, is brushed over the cheese to do exactly, in fact, we didn't see my film from the mountains, but we might have time to watch a little bit at the end. But no salt is added to the curd before it's put in the mould. And the salt is added to this cheese after it's in the mould, and it's brushed with a brine solution, so the salt is added afterwards. That means that it changes the texture of the cheese, but it also inhibits bacterial growth. And if you want to know more about these things, I'll tell you what you really need to do. And I have enjoyed the courses from the Academy of Cheese. Level 1 is just brilliant because it tells you about different types of cheese. It tells you how they are made and how to recognise really good cheeses when you see them and taste them. So the cheese market is actually opening a cheese course this autumn for the first time, so you can join us with that. So back to building our tartiflette. If you remember, we cooked the onions, we softened them really slowly, so we have some delicious onions. I've got something making a noise behind me. I think it's our tartiflette ready to share. We need our onions.
Onions, right, onions.
We need
Onions,
onions.
There we are.
So we're going to put some potatoes in the pan, into the dish, and you can see that I'm now putting in some onions, and we're going to put in our lardons. Now these measurements are what we think are pretty perfect, but you can be as greedy as you like. So if you really like potato, have more potato. If you really like lardons and you really like bacon, add more bacon. Be flexible. You know, they used bacon in lardons, or, you know, smoked bacon, because that is what they made and that is what's traditional. There's nothing stopping you using a chorizo. There's nothing stopping you using something else. So you can.
I know what's wrong with that.
You know what's wrong with that. Great, good. Perhaps the fire alarm will go off. You're at the door. You're at the door. So we're layering up. We're just thinking we might have a fire alarm because Lucy's actually just put our ready tartiflette onto a hot hob. So let's see what happens. We shan't worry about it until, actually, to say we're channeling our Keith Floyd is really an understatement. So, potatoes, more onion,
More bacon.
more bacon. Can we have a little close up, do you think?
Yes, hold on.
Let's
What
have
was
a
the
look.
name of that? What was the name of his?
Floyd on whatever. Floyd
No,
on.
but he had the name of the
Oh,
person
did he
who
have a
used to do-
helper?
The person
was
who used
his
to do
helper?
his filming. I used to go close up on here.
One more layer. Yeah, close up on here, please. Close up on this because we've just got one more layer of potatoes, please. And here we go. One more layer of potatoes. You can cut them as thin or as chunky as you like, be as artisan as you like. They had good knives. They sharpened them on stones. Quite the best way to sharpen a knife, but we are making a peasant dish after all. And so here's our potato. And be rustic about it, you know, it doesn't all have to be beautiful. And over that, we're going to pour our lovely wine. The smell of this is absolutely delicious. Did you season it nicely with salt?
Yes.
Okay, so we're seasoned, we've tasted it, we've tasted our lardons, we know exactly what we're doing. It's going to be a beautiful thickness. Now, what's really important now is what we do with the reblochon. So the idea is that this reblochon will melt into that. So we need the skin on the top so it'll get crusty. We need the paste, which is the technical term for the inside of cheese, to be downwards. And so we need to cut the cheese horizontally. So now, look at that. Just look at that. Roberto, you have done us proud. Roberto is at the French Comté at Borough Market every day. And he has simply the best reblochon there is. A true reblochon, by the way, do you remember the mark on cheeses? So this shows that it's a real reblochon. You can be as greedy as you like with this cheese. We say 350 grams in the recipe. That's about 350 grams, but if you want to squish a little bit more on, you can. And you can save the rest either as cook's perks or pop it on your cheese board. I like it raw, and it is fabulous cooked. That is going to go in the oven for 30, 35 minutes at 180. You could have made this ahead. So plenty of time for a gin and tonic, put your lipstick on while your friends come round, have a little aperitif. You can slot that into the oven and it's a great dish to share with your friends. So, don't have to rush because it's only 7:07. So that's going into the oven.
Ladies, we are the next 30 minutes slot has started over on the other side.
We're here.
But don't worry, you carry on.
We're here and it's ready.
We don't need to Zoom for another half an hour, or 20 minutes.
And that has had 35 minutes in the oven. We would be enjoying this with the most delicious green salad. I always like mine with some cornichons and little gherkins. We've got a perfect texture of the sauce, which is just thickened.
And the crispiness.
And the crispiness of the cheese.
Looks delicious.
It is absolutely delicious. Do you think I ought to have a fork? And
I'm
just
really hungry now.
just wait 1 minute, I'm going to reach the fork. And I'm just going to do that lovely Rick Stein thing. And I'm just going to go, oh, blimey, that's hot. I don't think that's what he says, but blimey, that's hot. But that is really delicious. Thank you very much for watching. I'm really sorry about our technical difficulties. Just say goodbye to the other Lucy. Bye.
Thank you, ladies. You were both
Bye,
amazing. Thank you, ladies. Enjoy your evening and enjoy that fantastic tartiflette. Amazing. Woo!
Thank you.